of the chums know that when you appear, as I've said many times, in front of monarchy, the royals, it can be absolutely terrifying. It doesn't matter how well you know your act or your song or whatever, suddenly there are these extra special pair of eyes, normally, of course, to your left in the royal box. And it makes most performers very nervous. I remember the brilliant Michael Crawford telling me just about his nerves and, the fact that even it appeared many times, he still felt nervous. The same, of course, with the brilliant entertainer Bonnie Langford. She said that, she was doing incredibly well on stage, and this was a birthday party for the Queen Mother. But as she looked at the back of the theatre, she thought she saw the theatre ghost. Can you imagine? Not only are you contending with, of course, the royal family in the royal box, but now you've got the theatre ghost to look at as well. But there was always certain artists that the royals wanted to appear in front of them. They were fans just like the rest of us. And there were many different people that, they wanted along the way. Now, I was lucky enough to meet Ricky Martin. Yes, not the hip swiveler girls. No, Ricky Martin, the son of the legendary crooner, entertainer, film star, actor, all-round good egg, a very good-looking man, Dean Martin. And his son told me this about, what could have been at the Royal Variety performance. To see you, thank you so much as ever for taking the time out to join me today. Lovely to have your company. It is always lovely to share these stories because they're lost in time if we don't repeat them, and then people don't see them or hear them and that sort of stuff. Now, Ricky Martin, as I say, a lovely, lovely man, just like his father, incredible when you were sat opposite him, the mannerisms, the vocal pattern, that sort of stuff. Sadly, no longer with us, but a lovely, warm, welcoming person. Really enjoyed my time with him, I have to say. Now, Ricky told me this great story about his father and none other than the legendary Frank Sinatra. You see, way back in June 1962, Frank Sinatra was doing one of his many shows, at this time at the Royal Festival Hall, in the presence of Margaret Rose, otherwise known as Her Royal Highness Princess Margaret. And she was a big fan, as was the Queen, the Duke of Edinburgh. Everybody loved Frank Sinatra. He had a voice that really just went through the masses, I think we all like a Frank Sinatra song, whether we know it or not. It can be something stupid, New York, New York, in the wee small hours. We all know a Sinatra song. That's his legacy, that's what he's left behind. But what they wanted him to do was appear at a Royal Variety show, and that would make perfect sense. Big stars had already done it, like Bing Crosby, Julie Andrews, Bob Hope, Louis Armstrong, so why not Frank Sinatra? Now, what was fascinating was it wasn't about Frank wanting money, because there's no money at the Royal Variety. You may get your expenses, you may get your airfare, but quite limited even for that. All the money goes to the relevant charities for the benevolent fund to keep artists that have struggled, who have entertained us previously. You get the picture. Now, Margaret, Princess Margaret, was hoping to persuade Frank to come and appear. This was June, and of course the Royal Variety takes place November, early December. He couldn't be persuaded, but he had an idea. And the idea really was, why not bring over the legendary Rat Pack show and do that in place of the usual Royal Variety? And this, when you think about it, can you imagine all those big stars? Peter Lawford, Buddy Greco, of course, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr. running right for a couple of hours at the world famous London Palladium. But it was pointed out that actually it's the Royal Variety being the key. And this means that they gave, the opportunity to many different artists, from around the world, the Commonwealth, anywhere, so that they could get a chance to appear in front of royalty. But Frank Sinatra didn't really want to do this because he either wanted 15 minutes, which is a long time for a top-of-the-bill spot, and he didn't necessarily feel that he needed to do it. As I said, he was the biggest star in the world. But he thought he'd offered something very good. It didn't happen. Many years later, it was reiterated again that perhaps, Mr. Sinatra might like to come along, perhaps also given the fact that he just had a mega hit with things like Something Stupid, and then a little bit later on with, of course, New York, New York. But Sinatra, old Blue Eyes, was his own boss, and he said, I've already met the Queen, the Duke of Edinburgh, and I've already performed in front of royalty. Why would he need to do this and be waiting around for hours for the last on the bill? Remember, this is Frank, right? Nobody tossed with Frank Sinatra. And so sadly, that idea, according to Ricky Martin, never actually happened. But I don't know about you, chums. I was thinking, should it have happened? Would it have worked? Or would it have just been literally a takeover? And maybe that's something they could do now. Should they focus on something that's very popular and turn that into a show rather than scraping around trying to find something that looks less like a pop concert and more like a night of variety, true variety? I'd love to know what you think. And more importantly, do you think Mr. Sinatra missed out? Should he have done it? Because then he would have gone down in the legacy that became and remains the Royal Variety Performance in front of British royalty. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.